Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast, brought to you on tour. Welcome to Rotterdam. Welcome to the Cafe Kanarie, which you may be able to see from the various paraphernalia behind us. We have selected, obviously, for its Norwich City connections here in central Rotterdam. Connor Southwell, joined by Paddy, Davitt, and Adam Harvey to talk about the week that's been, to talk about plenty of transfer news that seems to continuously unfold whenever we leave our apartment here, and obviously answer some of your questions as well, which we've asked for on social media. Paddy, it's been a busy few days, hasn't it?
Busy few hours, Connor. What are we, Wednesday night?
Yeah.
En route to dinner. Not going to be a quiet affair when you get phone calls to suggest that there might be a twist in the Sargent saga. Obviously following on from earlier in the day, with those reports in Germany that, as it was reported, Wolfsburg had decided they couldn't go any higher than Norwich were asking, and so had pulled out. One small detail missed out of those reports from what we're led to believe, and it was Josh Sargent who pulled the plug within the last sort of 48 hours. Now that throws up all sorts of other questions. We're recording this, as I say, on Wednesday night, but pretty clear that he will not be going to Wolfsburg, and it wasn't really the club-to-club element on that. They wasn't quite there in terms of an agreement. Still discussing figures, a little bit north of the figures that were put out in the German press earlier today, but that's all been halted, and it's been halted because Josh Sargent doesn't want to go to Wolfsburg. So a major curveball thrown in, and we'll see what unfolds from here. I think it's safe to say I don't think you want to be running away with the idea that he is now pledging his allegiance to Norwich City and will be here beyond September the 1st. But that said, there isn't any other actors who were anywhere near as advanced as Wolfsburg were in terms of the club-to-club element. So there's going to have to be a lot of water flow under the bridge. But yeah, and as we sit here, we're still awaiting Papa Diallo and Jeffrey Schlupp to be confirmed. So if our phones start going off, then that'll just top it off nicely. But it's not being dull, Connor, no.
No, well, the good news is we've eaten, and we're, well...
Not very well, though. Do we want to go into that?
Well, we will do in a little while, yeah, maybe. But, I'm well fed, maybe these two less so, but well watered as well, you can see here. And thank you to the guys at the Kanarie Cafe for allowing us to, well, first and foremost, putting up with our English, and then for allowing us...
Connor, when I asked, obviously, permission to film, when I announced that we were here as football journalists covering the Canaries, that was a revelation to them.
So there you go.
As you rightly said, we was in here yesterday en route to watching the Lionesses, and it needs some Norwich City paraphernalia, some flags, some scarves. So if there's any Norwich fans ever get themselves down to Rotterdam, get in here. Oh no, that's not there. I should have turned that off. That's a bit unprofessional. That's a mate. That's
a fine.
Yeah. So no, he's still here. But if you're in the vicinity at any point, come down to the Cafe Kanarie and bring some Norwich memorabilia with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can only see what's behind us, really. So I don't know how much of the wall of Canaries you can see, but we've got a wall of Canaries there. We've got some Canaries there. We've got Canaries on the toilet wall. It's nice yellow flowers, yellow candles. It's pretty nice in here, Adam, isn't it? If you're of a Norwich City persuasion.
Yeah, I couldn't quite believe it. I was sort of doing a bit of digging yesterday, just kind of somewhere to watch the Lionesses last night, and it sort of came up with a list of places that supposedly show sport. They don't actually show sport in here, but we thought we'd come in here anyway because the name was pretty apt for obviously what we're over here doing. And yeah, it's quite a nice bar. There's good offerings on drafts. So me and Paddy are well watered as well, so all's good.
All is good in the world. Right, Paddy, let's start with Josh Sargent then, because as we said, that is news that is broken in literally the last couple of hours as we record this. I think you're going to see this podcast on Thursday morning, so hopefully it's not moved on by then and this isn't too outdated. I think we probably feel that's unlikely, but famous last words, and given how the last couple of days have gone, you never quite know, and it's been a transfer window full of hijacks and all of the various words that you'd like to use. But I guess the obvious question, Paddy, because as you said, the clubs were pretty much there on the fee. There's some reports that we believe to be accurate that Josh Sargent went out to Germany very much at the start of the summer and kind of to explore what their facilities are like, what they would have to offer. I'm sure to have some talks as well. So what do you think has provoked this U-turn? It certainly doesn't feel like a Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not leaving.
No, I mean, we've asked the question, and the situation isn't any firmer really than what we've reported in terms of definitively he doesn't wish to go there and has made that clear to both clubs. Therefore, that race is run. I don't see him coming back from that. You can surmise where Wolfsburg are in terms of their feelings towards Sargent and the cat and his camp, and maybe also Norwich, because a hell of a lot of body of work has gone into this. You're right. This isn't something that has only popped up in the last week or two. This has been a summer-long body of work, and probably even a bit longer, really, between the respective clubs, hierarchies, lots of negotiations. Wolfsburg's initial levels were nowhere near. They went away. They came back very recently, much nearer what Norwich's valuation is. But just to reiterate, at the point where Sargent clearly has indicated no, they hadn't locked in an agreement, but I think there was a feeling it was moving towards that situation. And there's obviously conflicting figures around, and you never know for definite. But it feels like, from our soundings, maybe around the £20 million mark, which I think would have represented an excellent deal for Norwich. Package that is, of course, in terms of the various attendant add-ons included. But that's all irrelevant now, because the key person in this dance, which is Josh Sargent, doesn't want to go. So the next question is, why doesn't he want to go to Wolfsburg? He was, clearly giving enough signals that he was interested in that move, and now he's decided he doesn't want to. The obvious conclusion, and that's just us hypothesising around this table, is that there maybe are other parties who maybe have indicated to him that, he might have other choices he'd like to make. And as a result, maybe he's just hit pause and just wants to see what's out there. It feels like, if that is the scenario, this could escalate quite quickly.
Hopefully not as quickly as this podcast comes out.
Not as quickly as this podcast, no. But there's absolutely no way, I don't see any way why, if there was nothing in the wind, no clubs interested, no clubs saying, hang on, put the brakes on with Wolfsburg, we're interested, we'll start to dial it up in terms of our, club to club element with Norwich. I don't see any other scenario that's in play, because you're not just going to stop the Wolfsburg thing if there's nothing there to go to, unless, of course, what you're actually saying is, no, I'm on board fully now and I want to stay here. I don't personally believe that is the case, because that flies in the face of all the sort of messaging around this since towards the end of last season, that he may wish to explore other opportunities if they were out there. So, for me, and it will become clear in time. Obviously, this will play out in a certain direction or another. But you only pause a deal that's got this far down the road if there's other interest. That's my take on it. So, let's see. We know Burnley are interested. We know Leeds are interested. There's been clubs in Italy reportedly interested.
MLS previously.
Correct. This time last summer, definitely. So let's see. There's still another month in the UK window and a bit longer for the MLS. And I'll stand by what I've said all through the summer. I think he goes. We all thought that was going to be Wolfsburg. Unless there's a major U-turn, and let's be honest, we won't rule it out after the twists and turns of today, but it seems highly unlikely now. So if it's not to be Wolfsburg, it's going to be somewhere else. That's my take on it.
Well, just to give you and look, people who follow Norwich will be aware of this, but to give you an idea of some of the events that have unfolded over the last 24 hours, we've had a leaked video of a player in a Norwich shirt, definitely, and that did happen, and we'll come on to that later. We then had an AI-generated picture of a player allegedly in a Norwich City shirt. That clearly wasn't real. We've now got a striker who was very, very close to the exit door, now saying he doesn't want to go. We've had, obviously, that Diallo deal, Norwich hijacking that, if you want to adopt that term. Yeah, we can after this point. It's been an odd one, Adam. I mean, from Sargent's perspective, I think as Pad said there, the natural reaction, I think, if you're an Norwich fan when you see the story that we put out, is to maybe raise a fist in the air and think, "Oh goodness me, that's excellent. He's going to stay in the Championship." Paddy said he feels that's unlikely. I would agree with him. I think I've said all the way along, I would couch Norwich's chances at about 5%. What do you make of it all?
I'd concur with both of you boys. Yeah, I can't see any world come September that Josh Sargent's still in a yellow and green shirt leading the line for Norwich, as much as that would be a great prospect, and something I think we'd all love to see. He's a born goal scorer at this level. His record shows that. But I think Norwich probably can't really afford as much as the contract there is in Norwich's favour, they probably can't really keep hold of him because, he is only another injury away from devaluing, even further, or, you get into sort of next summer, he's got 2 years left, and maybe if he hasn't quite hit the heights as he had done in some of the previous years, then Norwich are going to have to take a bit more of a cut in terms of the fee that they, has been sort of put about this so far this summer, in and around the £20 million mark, which I think, given his injury record, his international problems, I think feels fair, and it also probably represents pretty good value and an opportunity for Norwich to try and reinvest, which they've obviously done so far this summer with Chris Gordon coming in. And again, it's all about the pathways. Are you going to be blocking anti-Sinats from having more opportunities? Are you blocking Chris Gordon from having more opportunities through the middle? So there's a lot to kind of put all together, I suppose, a bit of a jigsaw. But I think the piece of Josh Sargent departing, I don't think that will come back. I think that's pretty foregone conclusion. He will depart, which is a shame because I think he'll go with most Norwich fans' best wishes. I think as much as this saga, I suppose, that's now starting to unfold is slightly more interesting, I felt he would probably try and do it in a professional and a sort of top way that I think he wants to try and be remembered as a bit of a cult hero, I suppose, and a bit of a likeable figure around Norwich that most fans will wish him all the best for his future. But maybe certain characters within the Norwich camp at the moment won't be best pleased that he's kind of turned down a potential move to the Bundesliga.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that final point that Adam made there, Pad, in terms of the way he's conducted himself, because let's be honest, in the last 12 months, and we've used this podcast to speak about particularly two of those younger players, to be fair, and look, with the caveat that it was their first experience largely of going through what they went through in Jonathan Rowe and Abu Kamara, and maybe even throw Adam Eder in there in terms of the way they handled their respective exits. We've spoken to the people that matter, and you just don't get that sense with Josh Sargent at all, even though I know there was previously in the build-up to him joining Norwich, there was a situation where, I'm not quite totally clued up on it, but I think there was a situation where he kind of asked not to play when things were very, very close to the end. But as things stand right now, certainly it feels like his influence and his presence around the group has been positive.
Well, you can only go by what Liam Manning said after Saturday's game over in Belgium, Saturday evening's game, when he led the side out, he captained the side, he was very vocal in the changing room. That was Liam Manning's take on it all. Talked about his maturity. For a 25-year-old, you forget he is relatively, in years, quite a young man. But
he's a day younger than me, so I'll take that.
There you go. So for me, it's not really an issue in terms of how he conducts himself and how he is around the group. But of course, as this now develops in sort of ever new, stranger directions, will that remain the case? It must be difficult. We'll come on to it. I'm sure we were lucky enough to go over to the training base on Tuesday and sit down with Liam and Ben and Neil Adams and just having a very nice chat about a lot of topics. And on the topic of Sargent, it was clear that they don't feel that they probably would have a Rowe, Kamara, Adam Eder type situation to handle, but you do have to remember that these are very young men. This is a life-changing decision they're facing. He's a young man with a family. He's got to think about that as well.
All sorts of pressure on him, by the way, from agents, from other people.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And while he is mature and he can probably deal with that, or he's better equipped to deal with that than maybe the players I've just mentioned there, because he's been through this once before when he came to England originally. It still must be we can't put ourselves in his shoes because we've never had to go through that, but it can't be an easy situation to have to live with day in, day out. That constant speculation, that constant doubt, uncertainty about what's next in your career. It's your profession, it's your life, it's your livelihood. So, but underpinning it all is, I think that he knows there's a right way to leave. I mean, it was pointed out a few times around maybe Onel Hernandez and how he handled his departure, that go out the front door, don't go out the back door, in terms of go with your head held high and the best wishes of everybody. And for me, that was Gabby Zara, that was James Maddison prior to. There's plenty of other examples. So, while it is difficult, and maybe even at the moment particularly difficult, because as I say, it felt like this was moving towards him moving on to the Bundesliga and Wolfsburg, and that seemingly isn't the case. You just hope that all parties concerned in this drama could just continue to conduct themselves as professionally as they can, and just get to that common position that they did with Zara, that they did previously with Madison, and it's just a win for all parties. And then I'm sure, I don't want to speak on their behalf, I'm sure most Norwich fans would wish him the best. He's been a great acquisition. They'll comfortably make a profit on him. He's been arguably the best striker of his type in the league, so he's got nothing to reproach himself for, really. In a Norwich shirt, he's given everything for the cause, and I'm sure he will continue to do that until the point he no longer is a Norwich player. And that is effectively where Manning pigeonholed this situation on Saturday evening. Until he's told differently, he will treat Josh Sargent as a Norwich player, and as such, he will use him as a Norwich player. So for me, to reiterate, this is Wednesday evening, we're recording this. If things don't escalate, then I would fully expect him to be available and involved on Friday in those 2 double-header games.
Yeah, and I think I make a couple of other points. I think probably round off this Sargent section that we've done here. I think first and foremost, he would have been at the club and seen what John Rowe endured when he made the decision that he did. Abu Kamara likewise, the level of reaction and how quickly, particularly with John Rowe, that he went from hero to zero very, very rapidly over the case of probably about an hour really at Oxford. He will have seen that, but he will have also seen that probably it didn't help his cause in terms of Norwich stuck to their guns. They commanded the level of fee that they wanted for him, and they got that as well. And Ben Napper has proven that with Ida, with Kamara, likewise. So I think, if anything, hopefully that culture that Norwich set last summer in terms of proving that actually going down that extreme route, and it would be extreme, isn't the right way to do it. Clearly, if you're Josh Sargent, and we've said this numerous times, you've had, 3 seasons in the Championship, you scored a ton of goals, everyone knows what he's about. And I think as well, I would make the point that recently this year, when those quotes came out, I think it was in The Guardian after he was away with the USA, and he wasn't necessarily happy with how they'd been put out and the way maybe they'd been cut around the edges and slotted into a piece that maybe presented him as saying something than what he actually said. And he was very keen. I think he did obviously get a player after the game. He was the player for the next game. I can't remember what that game was. And he was very, very quick and very keen to set the record straight on what he meant and how much respect he had for Norwich City supporters who have taken him and his family in to their hearts as well. So hopefully we don't end up there. And like you say, Pad, this can all end very amicably. It feels like where we're at the moment. Let's hope that continues. Right, Adam, let's move on to incomings. Because it's busy. And by the way, we've got loads of your questions to get through. Thank you so much for sending them in. We're going to do them in the second half of the show. Where do you want to start? Papa Diallo or Pape? We're not quite sure yet. Or Jeffrey Schlupp?
Let's do Papa Diallo, I think, because he's already been shot in a yellow and green shirt, and we all saw it circulating across social media yesterday evening, which probably came as
very interesting pixelated faces in that one.
There was. I couldn't quite work out who they were, but it was an intriguing, development. I think we all probably knew that it was going to come to that conclusion. There was obviously the reports from a certain Senegalese outlet that was sort of saying he'd passed the medical, and I think we all knew that was ongoing in the background yesterday anyway. But then to sort of see the literal footage of him, sort of doing his media shoot, I think it's kind of built that excitement, I suppose, around the fan base. There was obviously the reports that he was heavily being linked to Watford. Reportedly done a medical there as well, and sort of look at him as a player and his pedigree, and he's come from the Mets Academy, where a lot of their sort of players, likes of Mane, Papa Sarr at Tottenham. There's also Ismaila Sarr as well at Palace. I think they all have sort of worked their way through Mets, all sort of have a similar background as well. So I think there is that little bit of excitement, and you sort of look at him in the clips you see on YouTube, which I'm always a little bit reticent to delve too much of a judgment on, but he looks an exciting player, the sort of player that will get fans bums off seats because he wants to take on men. He's got that pace, he's got some skills, and looks like he's got the ability to finish. And his numbers at the moment, I think it was 11 goal contributions overall last year in the Liga 2. Which is decent numbers. I think there's a lot of still room and scope for improvement, which inevitably under hopefully Liam Manning and sort of the model that Norwich operate under, he'll only develop and hopefully go and get better. And of course, in the future maybe have a larger sell-on value, which is kind of the model that Norwich operate under. So I'm excited for it, and I think it fills a void in that sort of left side where Borja Sainz has now departed. And there was kind of a few question marks as to who Norwich would get, and to me he feels like a good fit on paper. 21 years old, lots of scope for improvement, and hopefully he'll fit well into the Championship.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, Pat, isn't he? Because like Adam, I think the first natural thing you do if you're a fan or if you do what we do, is to you check him out on YouTube and you kind of see all of it. And my takeaway was all of what Adam said, but also he looks quite tall. But actually, you see in the video that maybe it's quite a slight frame that he's got. I mean, it's an interesting kind of proposition, but he's an interesting proposition in terms of where he's at and his base level and some of the characteristics he has. In terms of his pace, clearly that's going to be a major facet of what he can bring, providing it gets done. It isn't at the moment, but that's what we're expecting. So if it doesn't, this is going to be hilarious. But yeah, I mean, what did you make of not only him but also the process that Norwich have gone? Because it's clearly been one that they've worked on quite quickly and been able to move on quite quickly ahead of Watford, obviously, which has been well documented.
And on that parallel with Quistgarden, for me, the dexterity that Norwich have shown in this transfer window is testament to Ben Napper, Lee Dunn, and all the people in their respective teams. Again, I keep referencing, we were able to sit down with Ben, amongst others, midweek, and without giving any secrets away, he was talking in this area more generally about the alignment that he says is in Norwich's club, from Mark Atanasio, Norfolk Holdings, through him all the way down, Lee Dunn, the process. And he feels that isn't the case in a lot of clubs, that you might have a sporting director with a certain idea and a certain profile, and then a recruitment type who's maybe at odds with that, and then maybe ownership, what they say. And that slows down the process. And both in Diallo's case and also Quistgarden, you would have to say that maybe that alignment has allowed Norwich to be very deft in sort of their movements, allied to that huge body of work and the networking that's gone on with the various actors in these two cases to position Norwich at the head of the queue, get Quistgarden done. Diallo is all but done when there was competition for both those players. And particularly with Diallo, because we believe Watford were quicker out the traps and did have an agreement with Metz before Norwich did, and did open dialogue with the player. But even in that scenario, Norwich were able to circumnavigate that and get it to this point where it seemingly they have won the race with another championship rival who themselves have quite a good track record of finding those type of players. We talked about Ismail Assar there. So, yeah, like you boys, I don't know too much about him, so I'm always reticent to opine too much. Let's see him in England. Let's see him in the championship. That frame is a slight concern, in terms of the robustness that's required for championship football. We've seen with Jurasek how he needed to add that to his game. So there are question marks, but there's going to be. This is a 21-year-old prospect with hopefully huge ceiling in terms of growth on the pitch and then his transfer value as a result. So it's a project type signing, but an exciting one nonetheless. And more evidence for me that Norwich have been very good this transfer window.
And what language does he speak?
Wolof. Don't ask me to pronounce anything in Wolof.
I've never even heard of it, so yeah. But that's going to be interesting to see even how they go about navigating that aspect of it. And as Paddy said, Adam, 21, already a Senegalese international, preparing to play a season in League 1, although we don't think he's probably ever going to make that appearance. But very, very productive in League 2 last season. There's a lot to like about his profile, even if we haven't quite seen a lot of him yet.
Yeah, exactly. I think the fact he sees Norwich as a better pathway for his career at this point is probably a positive signal of intent, and probably only increasingly builds around kind of the rest of the business so far this summer, that it feels really on paper good and shrewd additions to Norwich and the championship, hopefully, for what they're trying to build here under Liam Manning. And yeah, you sort of say the opportunity he would have had next year in the top flight in France, and you can sort of debate the quality of that over the course. But a decent season in that league, and he might potentially be getting a move to another top European league. So he clearly sees something in Norwich in the project here, whether that is a route to the Premier League at some point, which I think we all know that's what majority of football players want to try and do in their career, is play in the Premier League, and I'm pretty certain that's probably the case for him, and that's why he's decided that Norwich is the perfect fit. So, as Paddy sort of said, there's still yet to be seen. We're not seeing him in a Norwich shirt yet, and not even seen him in any pre-season games to really make a firm judgment, but on paper feels like an exciting one, and sort of fits what they're trying to do here. And I think hopefully a lot of the younger players that they recruited last year can develop even further, and hope for him first season maybe there'll be a little bit less judgment, but I think there'll also be an expectancy that he can deliver. So we'll see what he's got, I suppose, when he's in the building.
Yeah, and it is going to be very interesting to see what he can provide. Norwich clearly, as you mapped out, Adam, short on left wingers, given Borja Sainz has gone to Porto, which, Paddy, probably leans us nicely to the next edition because, and another area that we've spoken a lot about has been left back, but it's been the left side generally, I think, throughout, and clearly some concern over Lucio Mahova, who is currently injured, Ben Kruzene, who isn't. We saw him in the Volendam friendly on Saturday, his first game time since March, but clearly still needs some time to get back. And both ended last season with pretty bad injuries. I think Kruzene obviously was the ankle one that he sustained at Blackburn, and Mahova was kind of quad and other issues as well within that. And that has kind of led Norwich to, particularly now with Kenny McLean out as well, and potentially needing surgery. We'll obviously get an update from Liam Manning on that on Friday. He would have been a left-back option, potentially. That, with him now being out, it feels like they did need some help. Aaron Cresswell was one that they tried for and clearly opted to go back closer to where he's from in Liverpool to go back there, essentially. And they've looked at other options, but they've settled on Jeffrey Schlupp.
And a very good pedigree as well. Back in the day, a Premier League winner with Leicester. Who could ever forget that achievement? More recently, a title winner in Scotland. Played 18 games or so last season on loan. And the first part of the season, he got more Premier League games with Crystal Palace. I think I checked earlier today. He's got his 280 career appearances in the Premier League. 32, I think is right in saying. 33 later this year. That could be a very good piece of business. I think Adam pointed out his injury record is excellent as well in terms of I don't think he's had any major injuries in the last few years, touch wood. So there's a lot to like in that. And crucially, I think, as we understand it, that's going to get done. So they've clearly got the sense from him that because they're very keen and they keep stressing it, they don't want to block pathways because that runs counter to what the model's all about. So if that is the case, then maybe he's on board with that. We don't know at this stage the contract length. Is it a year with an option? Is it 2 years? That will become clear in due course. But he's obviously had those discussions and is happy to come in and fulfil that role. But in the short term, particularly with those injury concerns you outline, moving up towards Millwall, I think he would be needed. And you would hope that with his level of experience at the football level he's played at in his career, he would be a very good addition. So yeah, I like that. I like that deal. That makes a lot of sense and it ticks a lot of boxes. And it isn't to the detriment of the player model. I think it could actually, particularly when Mahova and Kruzene are fully fit and available, what a great mentor to have. Somebody who's been there and done it and can impart some of that advice and help those two continue along the path that the likes of Manning and Napa hope and believe they're capable of doing. So it's a win-win for me, that deal, yeah.
Yeah, and Adam, just to sort of finish part one really, and to come with you on Jeffrey Schlupp, it's a very interesting, felt quite clever bit of recruitment. Ended the season with Celtic, won the Premier League. I think he last played in the Championship in 2013-14. You read lots about him, you speak to people, they speak about the level of professionalism that is there. And again, for where Norwich are at and for where they've been under Ben Napper, it's a very different type of deal and an age profile. But as Paddy said, I think when you look at it in the round, you look at the positions he can cover, which is basically all of them. I think he's played everywhere bar right back and keeper in his career. Feels like a useful person to have around for the next year or so, given that it's a very, very young group.
Yeah, I don't think you can sort of understand, I suppose, the importance of having versatile players that can sort of operate in different positions in the Championship, because we all know from last season and seasons prior to that injuries are part and parcel in the Championship, and Norwich have kind of been left short in certain positions at certain times, and we've sort of, I think back to last year, maybe even midfield, at one point there, sort of October, November time, where they felt like they had no options. The fact you've got a player there that can operate in the left-back slot, he can operate further forward in more advanced left side, attacking side, he can play in the midfield. I think, it's a very useful player, got the experience as well under his belt, played in the Premier League, played in the Championship, played in Scotland, and he's maybe a little bit different to some of the other players they've brought in previous years. You kind of go back to that Stuart Webber, David Wagner sort of recruitment summer, where a lot of the players were maybe a similar age profile, but they maybe felt like players that were sort of on the way down. Schlupp, for me, still feels like he's got a lot to give. He's done it last year at Celtic, and I think if it wasn't really for the wages maybe that he was demanding, relative to what Celtic could offer him, then I'm pretty certain they would have maybe looked to try and bring him back. So the fact Norwich have managed to swoop in again ahead of Championship rivals, and I think West Brom were one of the sides that were touted with him. So to bring him in, help try and sort of give that experience to some of them younger players, as Paddy sort of outlined in Kwaseni and Mahovo. I think it's a good deal on paper. A free agent, signing. You'd imagine probably only going to be a 1-year deal with an option. Obviously we get to see that, and that will be sort of published when the deal gets all announced. But it doesn't feel like Norwich is going to get stuck with him, if it doesn't work out. So all the told, I think it's a good bit of business.
Yeah, and to link the two together, if you're Papa Diallo walking into the Championship, imagine having someone like Jeffrey Schlupp there to help you out. It feels, as we say, I think it ticks a lot of boxes. Feels like quite a clever bit of recruitment. I mean, this is somebody who's playing in the Champions League against Michael Elise and doing very, very well in that competition as well, in that certain game, and was a Scottish champion last season. So, yeah, 32 years old, 33 in December, but certainly doesn't feel like a player that is on the way down. Part 2 is going to be about answering your questions. So, Paddy, just to kind of finish part 1, how much have you enjoyed Rotterdam and the week that we've spent in the Netherlands and very briefly Belgium for a few hours on Saturday?
Up until that meal we just had on, I don't want to keep labouring the point, but it was not very good. So up until then, it's been...
Well, what was wrong with it?
Well, it was hake and chips. Now, obviously, in dear old Blighty, you get a piece of fish, you don't expect it to have 8,000 bones in. So
like a xylophone.
Hadn't been deboned, basically. Yeah, it wasn't good. So disappointed is an understatement, but we don't need to get overboard with it. Other than that, it's been good. Nobody wants to hear that or believe, for that matter, that we've been working hard. But as we sit here in a pub, drinking and just talking about football, but. There are a lot of logistical elements to these sort of tours which you don't see or care about, but they do grind you down a bit. But no, this has been a particularly good one so far. We've got a nice Airbnb, just 10-15 minutes out of the centre, and it seems a nice city. We've had a chance to see a little bit of it, and we enjoyed coming in last night to watch the Lionesses. So.
What a win that was!
It was indeed, yeah. The Brazilian barman, he got coming home on the music centre, and so
you nearly caused a diplomatic incident, though, didn't you?
Well, I didn't realise he was Brazilian. I just thought he was a Dutch barman. So when he was talking about the World Cup, and I was saying, Argentina are probably looking good, aren't they? He wasn't too impressed with that, but there you go. But it's the universal language, isn't it? So no, I digress. It's been good. Yeah, it's been good so far. We've obviously got the 2 games on Friday. That'll be another long day, but I think you've already put it in the newsletter. We might try and get ourselves up to the Feyenoord Stadium tomorrow afternoon, maybe have a little tour around there. So the Kuip, if we can see any decent players kicking about, we'll see if Ben Napper fancies them. So yeah, no, it's all in all, it's been a very good trip. What would you boys say?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's a nice city. I love the Dutch architecture and the way they build buildings. Today, actually, we've been to see the cube houses, which if you haven't seen those in Rotterdam, Google them. They are some of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in my life. I think they're modelled on windmills. Maybe someone who I know we've got Dan who resides, a Norwich fan that resides in the Netherlands that watches these pods and is often in blogs. So I'm sure he'll be able to provide us with a little bit of information on those. But they're very interesting. Adam?
Yeah, I would only really echo the points that Pad's made. I think, we've enjoyed kind of the different cuisines we've tried, and on the whole, up until tonight, had been pretty good. I think I'll give that a clear, steer clear maybe over the last couple of days in terms of hake and chips, but everything else has been pretty good. The weather up until maybe this morning, I think there was some rain overnight the other night, but this morning it did bucket it down to the point that after we'd had our breakfast, we were sort of stuck outside the cafe, sort of waiting for the rain to ease a little bit. But we can't be, too picky, I suppose, over the weather. We can't control it, but on the whole, yeah, really enjoyed it. Nice, vibrant city. It's been a pretty good vibe, and I think the games were both pretty testing, as we kind of outlined, for Norwich, so that's useful. The training base they've got seems pretty perfect for what they require as well. So all things told, yeah, I think certainly we feel it's been a successful trip so far, and I think Norwich will feel the same.
Absolutely. Right, part 2 is going to be about answering your questions. We'll see you in a moment. Hello everybody, welcome back to the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast. Here following the Canaries on tour at the Kanarie Cafe. We were inside, we've just moved outside, it's getting a little bit busy. We don't really want to have anyone in shot that doesn't want to be in shot or disrupt people's meals or anything like that. So we've come out, we've got the a building that looks quite nice behind us, which will mean nothing if you're listening on audio. But yeah, we've moved outside, and in this part, we're going to answer some of your burning Norwich City questions. We asked for you to send them in. We got a lot of replies, some good ones, some silly ones, some interesting ones. So we'll endeavour to cover as much as we can of them over the next half an hour or so. Paddy and Adam still with me. Paddy, first question is directed at you. It's from Shanghai Canary on X, who asks, where's Paddy's #NoCircus been this window? It's iconic. Bring it back.
Yeah, everything has its day, doesn't it? You know, we have to move on in life. So just thought, mainly because it's associated with a platform that has a lot of circus clowns on it. Probably is not in keeping with anymore, so we don't need to open that can of worms. But yeah, well, with the odd occasion, we might bring it out of, retirement. But
Save it for the big ones.
save it for the big ones. Yeah, we'll save it for, I don't know. Trying to think of a big one. When Norwich get to the Premier League, maybe we'll start reactivating it. But yeah, no real reason. No real reason. Just as I say, I certain times on that platform I despair. So maybe I have less reason to go on there as I used to do. So, but we're still on there. We haven't withdrawn, have we? But although some elements on there would probably prefer us to withdraw. But so no, I'm just rambling basically. But no premeditated. It's just time to move on.
Yeah, that sounds like not gone, but maybe just in storage for a little while, which is maybe the way to look at it. Adam, let's come to you next for the next one, which will be from Matt Johnson, who says, and I think this was a story that was elsewhere today, what do you make of AI suggesting Norwich will finish bottom of the league? Is it complete rubbish, or are we all getting ahead of ourselves? I personally think top half, but closer to being regular contenders for the playoffs is a realistic expectation. So I guess the question in there really, Adam, is what are your hopes, expectations for the upcoming championship campaign?
Yeah, I wouldn't go too much on AI after last night's events. But yeah, in terms of expectation, it's still tough because obviously there's so many plates still to spin over the course of the rest of this summer and the transfer window that's unfolding. But what I would say is I think Norwich on paper, and we've got to caveat it with this football's not paid on paper, but it feels like a nice start, which is probably what Liam Manning would have been hoping for. Sort of avoid some of the big players, I suppose, in the league. I think the fact they start with a home game as well against a side, and again it could be in a long come Norwich, but a team that notoriously they tend to do quite well against at Carrow Road. That feels like a good platform for starters, and I think the fact they've done their business so early, and the fact that the group have all been together over this pre-season tour camp, where you kind of go back 12 months under JHT, and it was kind of players still arriving. I think Krasene was the second arrival in Austria last year, and that was sort of getting towards the back end of July. So it just didn't feel quite sort of there and ready to go. And even kind of the age profiles of the players they've signed this summer, they all feel a little bit more championship ready. Players that are sort of ready to step in and do a job straight away, rather than an Oscar Svartau who at the time was 18, sort of stepping into England for the first time, and relative to some of Norwich's academy players is still younger than most of them. So yeah, I think another year of experience as well for some of those boys, Cordoba, Forson, et al. I feel a lot more hopeful that Norwich can be at least competitive towards the playoff places this season.
Good stuff, Paddy. I'll come to you on a similar type question, but I think we can answer this one from R in one word. Any truth in Norwich's rumoured attempts to hijack the Windass to Wrexham transfer?
Don't keep saying hijack to me, Connor. I'm pig sick of the word.
I'm reading what's been read.
Well, I mean, all I will say is that it was almost laughing whenever that name was put to the characters who know about these things inside that football club. So that tells me that there was never any remote possibility of Josh Windass. Maybe comes to Norfolk on his holidays, I don't know, but he certainly wasn't going to be coming here to play for Norwich City. Is that gone through to Wrexham?
Yes,
yeah. Good luck to him.
They were a lot closer to Dean back in the day than I think they ever have been to Josh. It's Josh, isn't it? I've got that the right way. My head sort of scrambled and went, have I got that the right way? But I did. Right, this from Jonathan Barker then for you, Pad, which is similar to the one that Adam has just answered. He has said, if we complete the deals in and out that you've reported, do you feel the squad is strong enough for a playoff push? Or would you like any other positions added to?
Well, I mean, as just to labour the point, we're here pre-Diallo, pre-Schlupp. if you want to zoom out a bit, we're here not knowing where Josh Sargent's playing his football beyond September 1st. So I think it's very hard at this stage to definitively nail your colours to the mast. I mean, if in some parallel universe we get to September the 1st and they've got Schlupp, Diallo, Matson/Topic and Josh Sargent in the ranks, then I would be pretty confident that is a group capable of attacking the top 6. But we just don't know. We just don't know at this stage. It's still over a month for the domestic window to close and longer for the MLS and 1 or 2 other leagues. So it feels positive. It feels like, as Adam says, they've been very proactive. But we've not seen Quistgarden in a Norwich shirt yet. So while that feels like an excellent bit of business, let's reserve judgment. Diallo's not officially in the door yet. Likewise, Schlupp. We haven't actually, we as in Norwich, progressed on that centre mid target, which they want to do. So too many variables for me at this stage to say anything with any clarity. But I'm still fairly confident that, what was it last season? 13th. I'll be staggered if this group, as it stands now, could not improve on 13th under a head coach who, let's be honest, worked a bit of a minor miracle for me to get Bristol into the top 6 with the resources he had. So that's why I'm pretty confident that right here, right now, we're looking at top 10. But how high you can raise that bar depends on what goes on between now and the end of the window.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting endpoint because Ollie has followed up with, won't ask you for a prediction, so many variables still, which is basically your answer. But I'll boil this to Adam first. But what would you say is Norwich's ceiling and floor this season? I guess that's kind of a range of the table maybe we're looking at.
Oof. Ceiling, you'd have to go top end of the playoffs, I think. Could they push towards the top 2? I think it's going to be difficult. You kind of look at some of the other players in the market. I mean, Birmingham are sort of splashing the cash. We don't mention the name, but the team down the road, I think they're going to be up and amongst it. A few others like the likes of Southampton, how are they going to get on? It's tough to say at this point under a different manager now in Will Still. Still got that sort of hangover, I suppose, from the Premier League. Are they going to go and attack it straight away? Sheffield United, you'll be disappointed, obviously, not to have been in the Premier League after sort of almost getting there last season in the playoff final. So there's going to be a lot of players, but I think top end playoffs, they've got to be in and around sort of anywhere between 3rd and 6th is definitely possible in terms of a high point. In terms of the low, yeah, you'd have to think anything below mid-table would be a bit of a push, but I still feel they'll be, if I had to put a prediction at this point, I think they'll be in and around 5th, 6th, 7th. That's kind of my middle of the road. But yeah, low point, mid-table, but I don't want to see them in and around that because I think then judgment on Ben Napper, Liam Manning, and probably a lot more question marks will start to come, and we don't really want to be in that territory.
Agree, Pad?
Pretty much, yeah. 5 to 10, I think, would be my spread. Hard to see them pushing up and above that. You saw last season just gone, there was that 3 or 4 clubs who just broke away. And we've seen that quite often in recent seasons. There's 2, 3, 4 who are just a bit better than the rest. So you have to think that reasonably is going to be the case this time around. I don't think that's Norwich right now in this development cycle. But equally, said it in the previous answer, so I find it hard to think that with Manning involved, with what they've done already in the window, which they'll look to do from here, that they would slip below 10th.
Yeah, I would say the top of the ceiling is probably, as Adam said, 3rd or 4th if everything went their way, if they avoided injuries, kept Josh Sargent. But I think that sort of baseline feels about, let's hope it's not any lower than where they went last season, but that probably feels like it is it's around about there. And of course we all know the question around the Southampton manager, which is will still have the will to manage Southampton come the middle of the season. We'll find out. Moving swiftly on, this from Matt Ware on X, very short, succinct, to the point. We like it. Is Shane Duffy likely to leave?
Well, I mean, it felt the noises at the back end of last season, that would definitely be the case. The MLS route, I had numerous individuals tell me that he had options out there. That might still be the case. I mean, there was 1 or 2 reports or 1 or 2 names in terms of championship clubs might be looking at him as well now. So I can see it. I could see a Barnes, Hanley style, shake hands, mutual. I could also see that not happening until January because obviously contractually he's now got he's on the cusp of his final 12 months. Mm-hmm. So you could see that maybe if it got to January, because by then it feels like the clarity would be there in terms of it's Medic, it's Darling, and then even below that it's probably Cordoba before it's it's Shane Duffy. So, yeah, I could see that in January, but I could equally see that once we get the season up and running, the clock ticks down to September the 1st. If he's not really got involved in the first 3-4 games, then again, the writing's on the wall for him. So, but he has to find something of a financial dimension that's as good or if not better than what he can get elsewhere. I always go back to a scenario that played out with Jordan Hugill where he clearly wasn't going to feature. He was coming into the final 6 months, wasn't it, of his contract, and he managed to get himself a longer deal. Barnes did it likewise elsewhere down the footballing pyramid. So, Shane Duffy will be in that scenario if he stays around till January. He will need to think about the what next. And if it isn't getting any action here, then it makes no sense for him to kick his heels here because he'll need to find a contract elsewhere. So long-winded, unlike Matt's question, but could I see him going in this window? Yes.
Okay, moving on. Jeff Mann, who has got one serious one and one fun one. So Adam, do you want the fun one or the serious one first?
I'll let you decide.
Okay, let's go serious first, then we can lighten shade. First one is Mark Attanasio really focused on the point of upgrading Carrow Road / matchday experience. What's one thing you'd upgrade, update or change to make it better this season?
I'd update the press box if I'm being perfectly honest, just from a personal point of view, because anyone
Look after yourself.
Nobody cares.
anyone who's had to or has seen the press box seats will know the sort of problems we have to deal with. But in terms of the stadium, I mean, I would personally get rid of the hotel if I could and sort of make Carrow Road a complete stadium. Sort of a little bit what Stoke have done now. I know they've still got one corner open, but just kind of bring the stadium. I think the sound would also be better if you kind of had a fully sort of integrated stadium rather than have a gap in the corner. So if I had my way, which I don't think is plausible because I think they've got a contract there with the hotel, but that would be the way that I would go.
My comeback on that would be if they put a corner in there, how much of that would have to be used for segregation? Because that's pretty close to the away fans. You're not going to be able to get it all full all the way, are you? So I'm sure that's maybe a consideration. Unless we open the can of worms and you move the away fans somewhere else.
I think there's been talk at times they could potentially move the away fans to kind of that Joma sort of family corner. I mean, if they could get them in there and sort of look at kind of the away end at the moment, it's kind of those big glass panels that don't sort of take up a mass amount of seats in terms of segregation compared to some of the other grounds we go to across England. So if there was a route maybe to do that, and I suppose bring that sort of noise from the Barclay right round in terms of the snake pit and then filled in corner as well, I think that noise sort of almost yellow wall-esque behind the goal, particularly if Norwich are shooting down that end second half, which they obviously try to do at most of the home games. I could see that being sort of only a benefit for them in terms of the fan base and that 12 man.
Nice. Right, the fun one, and I'll come to Paddy on this as well, from Jeff Mann, of course, so you might be able to guess the theme. How many Carrow Road sausage rolls do you reckon you could eat during one 90-minute game? I think this depends on the game, personally.
It depends on the game. It depends what you've eaten. It depends what time the kickoff is as well. I mean, if it's a 12:30 kickoff, I'm not really a massive person for eating sort of too early in the day, so I think if it was that kind of kickoff, I'd struggle a lot more. But if it was a 7:45 and you've sort of prepared yourself and not eaten too much all day, or you've had hake from the market in Rotterdam, then I think you could probably go. Oh, I don't know. How big are they? Are they sort of?
They're not like the foot long ones, are they? I think they're sort of that maybe. Someone can correct us. Probably Jeff Mann can correct us. They're quite dense. Quite girthy, aren't they? Sausage rolls.
Let's go 4 or 5.
Pad, can you advance on 4 or 5?
I've never seen them at Carrow Road. I'm more of a hot dog man. So if the question was hot dogs, I could definitely go for about 12. But Archer's sausage, name check Archer's, finest butchers you can find in Norwich, in my opinion. I don't mind a sausage roll. If this is an auction thing we've got going, I'll go 6.
6, yeah, I'm tough in 6. They're quite flaky, I think, the Carrow. But from all of Jeff Mann's posts that I've seen, there's a lot of flakiness on them, and I think that would probably spoil
liquid, I take it as well at this challenge.
In between,
man versus food challenge. Okay. If you've got to have liquid, particularly if it's beer, then the 6 would be no problem.
Okie dokie. Right, let's see what else we have got down here. Paddy, this one for you, which is pertinent because as we record this, he is currently in action for Silkeborg in their Europa League qualifier. I think you got an assist if you said that correctly. So, be interesting to see what unfolds over the next few days and weeks. But Ryan Reader on X, surely this Maatsen deal is slipping through our fingers now.
Well, I mean, there has been talk in the last 24, 48 hours that Nuremberg, Bundesliga 2 team, Miroslav Klose, very, very well-known former striker for Germany, is in charge there. They like him, but I think reading a little bit more into it, it's because they've got a player currently on the books who's interested in Stuttgart, and they're looking at Matson as a potential replacement. So that wouldn't feel to me as if it's particularly well advanced. That's not the case with Norwich in terms of their contact. That's been pretty ongoing now for most of the summer. Whenever you speak to the people who matter at Norwich, they infer that the player and his representatives are open to a move. So that isn't an issue. And obviously there was reports in the Danish media there, 3 weekends or so ago, that Norwich's initial sort of inquiry around the £1.75 million mark had been rejected. It seems to be that it will need to be around the £2.5 million mark. So we'll see. Still, I think have brought in a midfielder, haven't they? But then there's talk. There's another one leaving the club. He is playing tonight. That in itself would tell you that this isn't very well advanced, because if that was the case, they wouldn't be risking him in that competitive game this evening. So, but I checked in again in the last 24 hours and were told that they still remain firmly in the pursuit of that player. But obviously Topic is another one who they've got in their sights, and it was told to me it'll be one or the other. So it'll either be Matson or it'll be Topic.
Yeah, so watch this space on that one. Steve has said, hi, I have the club confirmed to us that they are currently only taking ESC slots on Jurasek and Chris Goran. If so, do you have any idea how Reyes isn't taking up a slot? British passport, perhaps. Thank you. So I've done some digging into this, Steve, on the back of question. We do actually do some stuff in preparation for this, which might amaze people given the level of production. But yeah, essentially, this is an interesting one, and it's been quite cleverly crafted. Let me make sure I get the answer up, so I'm absolutely bang on this. So essentially, Norwich signed Vicente. So ESC slots, of course, are the elite significant contribution slots. They sit outside the GBE slots, which are essentially work permits. That Norwich have 4 of those. They're using 2 of them, and it basically means that they can sign players from not anywhere, but they're essentially kind of like wildcard picks. So you don't necessarily need work permits that came in post-Brexit that made recruitment a lot more limiting. That's basically a very streamlined version. You can, of course, go and read plenty more online and at PinkUn.com if you want to find out more about it. So the reason Reyes doesn't is, from what I've worked out along with some people who are experts in this field who have helped me, is Vicente Reyes signed for Norwich in June 2023. He then joined Forest Green Rovers, I think on loan. They were in League 2 at that time. And as an under-21 player, you need to have 70% of the minutes played essentially in League 2 when you're in there in order to qualify for one. So he did hit that threshold, but obviously because it was half a season, he needed half a season more. He then went on loan to Cambridge United, where he played, I think, 60% of minutes over the first half of 24-25. That means when Norwich recalled him in January, he was no longer an ESC slot. He was able to be converted and able to stay around the squad. So hopefully that answers the question. It's a little bit complex, but essentially because of the loans that he had. So hopefully that answers that one for you. Let's see what else we've got, because we have got absolutely loads. So thank you to everyone who has sent them in. This is an interesting one, Adam from the Norfolk Sonic, who says, who do you guys think would be preferred choice to start as the number 9 on opening day as of right now? I guess we're doing this in a post Sargent world, because they have asked Sienats or Chris Gordon ?
Providing he's fit and available, I think I'd go Chris Gordon through the middle. You kind of get the sense, maybe speaking to those that matter within the football club, that maybe there's been sort of a slight shift in the way they view Sienats. I think they could see him as a player who can operate through the middle, but maybe he sees himself as someone that can operate in one of those wide positions, particularly off the right, which given, you've got a few other options, I suppose, as well in sort of those wide areas now coming in as well, sort of provides a little bit more competition in those areas. Whether Norwich, in a post-Sargent world, delve back into the market for a number 9 is also a question mark. But I think if you sort of put me on the spot here and now, I'd probably go for Chris Gordon through the middle against Millwall.
Paddy, agree?
Absolutely, and for all the reasons Adam's outlined, yeah, there does seem to be, maybe it's Manning's introduction into the equation, but not sure Cernach is at this stage seen as that number 9 replacement.
Yeah, and I'll follow that up because there was another question, if I can find it, from Sam on X, who has said, does Chris Gordon's injury record outlined in the video we did after his announcement worry you? The guy who was the Bromley football expert, Toke, said he missed quite a few games, so do we need to manage his minutes this season?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Particularly, I can't off the top of my head remember how many games the Super League season is in Denmark, but I know it's considerably less than a Championship 46-game season. And also the congested nature of the calendar, the Saturday-Tuesday cycles, that will all be new for him. And if there is, I don't want to use the word issues, but if there are something empirically in his career to date that suggests that he needs to be managed in terms of his workload and his training load, and Norwich should be well across that, and we'll probably see that reflected in certainly this first 6 months, because there's no point in flogging him to the point he breaks down, because then you're not going to have him available. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that there's enough sharp brains at Colney now that they will be able to manage that situation if they have identified something that is a bit of a red flag in terms of a player who his career history shows you that you need to be very careful how you manage him, because the Championship, for a reason, is probably seen as one of, if not the most arduous across Europe, certainly in the top leagues. So the expectation has to be that he probably won't be able to go week in, week out, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday.
Yes, right. We're changing tones slightly now. This is a bit of a lighter question. We said we'd try and cover a lot. So this is sent in from Lee. This is a would you rather question, gents, that I think you will enjoy. So, would you rather fight an orangutan with a sword once a year or fight a chicken every time you get in your car?
I think I'd rather fight a chicken every single time I get on my car, to be honest. Just sort of looking at maybe the relative size of the two creatures. I think an orangutan also having a sword and...
No, have you got the sword or the orangutan?
Well, it's a sword fight, I presume, with the orangutan.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I'd back myself against a chicken every single time I got on my car. I'd just have to walk everywhere or cycle everywhere and I can't get around it. Or get the bus. First bus.
There we go. Very good. Pad?
Yeah, just trade in my car. So the chicken won't be able to find me. So happy days.
There we go. That's the answer. We've got some even worse ones coming up later, so you wait for that. There was an interesting one from Finley here, Pad, that I will bowl at you. It says it appears anti-Cianats has been. Actually, I'll come to Adam because I gave him a lighter one, and then maybe we'll come to Pad with a lighter one again in a minute. Finley has asked. It appears anti-Cianats has been tested as a 10 or behind the striker in the friendlies so far. Could that go on into the season?
I think so, for kind of the reasons that me and Pad both outlined there in one of the previous answers. Manning sees something in him. He sees something within himself, the sort of operate as one of the wider players. And, I think if Chris Gordon probably doesn't sign for the money Norwich signed him for, and him coming over to England to not play, and he definitely sees himself as a number 9. So if you're kind of going with him playing through the middle, then Cianats has got to try and find his way into the team. And clearly, Norwich at the moment, that can change and will change, are a little bit lighter in those wider areas or sort of in that attacking number 10 role. So there probably will be a door that opens up for him. I think I'd rather see Forson in 10 based on what we've seen so far during pre-season. He seems to have found his sort of his own, I suppose, within that role and within this system that Liam Manning's currently sort of undergoing throughout pre-season. So that would probably lend itself to Cianats playing in one of the wider positions. And if you can kind of, I think they put a training video up yesterday and he was pretty sort of pivotal in one of the goals that I think Eurosec put away. So if they can find a way to sort of utilise him in that role and get the best out of him, then yeah, I can certainly see that being a path that Liam Manning takes.
Pad, this from Dom Spencer. This is directed specifically to you. They have said, is Davitt Jr. Norwich or Cov?
Oh, don't even go there with that. He's... I won't tell you the message I've had, but it's related to them two signings, potential signings. So, but nothing that's going to happen before the end of this podcast. So we'll leave it there. But you heard it first. Anybody now watching this? But well, he's basically Norwich, yeah, which is perfectly fine with me because I'm Coventry because I'm born, grew up, family from Coventry. They're all Coventry fans. So. Good on him, I say. Support the team and the city you grew up in. So I actively encourage the Norwich connection. I'd like to see a little bit of Coventry allegiance there, but there's absolutely none. You go into his bedroom, he's got a Norwich scarf hanging off his curtain rail. He's got a Norwich top as well. He's got a Boca Juniors top as well. His godmother got him a Boca Juniors top.
He's a football hipster already.
Oh, big star. We was funnily enough, no end of times. We've been the last time I was on the escalators in Castle Mall, and somebody turned around and said, "Is that a Boca Juniors top?" I said, "Yeah, he's a well-travelled man for a 4-year-old, 5-year-old as he was."
No comprende. You could have pretended.
I know, yeah. So he has good taste, and obviously, being a Norwich fan, he's got a good taste. So no, and there'll be no attempts at changing allegiances. I've heard some horror stories about that, and fathers trying to change their siblings. So, I mean, you don't have that problem with your lad, I know. But no, if he wants to be Norwich, then good on him, I say.
Yeah, my little one, who our oldest ones are the same age. He is more interested at the moment in football shirts, probably more than football. So he's got, the goalkeeper shirt they had last year, the kind of rainbow one. He wears that, he likes that. So that's who we are. And he's started, I've got him into volume, which is not great in the house, admittedly. But he's got a little foam football. I throw it to him, and he just loves absolutely whacking it. So that's a good place to be. Right, Adam, this is from Daniel Emery. We're coming up to about the last 5 minutes or so now. The big question everyone is asking about Jack Stacey: should he take number 2 so Norwich don't have a right back wearing number 3 again?
You see, I'm kind of on board with that. I like players having shirts that replicate where they play on the field. I don't like it these days when you get Trent Alexander-Arnold in 66. It just doesn't look right.
I'll tell you what I don't like: 13 being an outfield player.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. It's like was it Asamoah Gyan used to play in 2 as a striker?
Yeah.
I just can't get my head around that.
Was Andy Carroll number 3 at Reading?
I think
2.
Yeah, I think he might have been. Yeah, they should just kind of make it that, when you sign for a football club, based on your position, you get assigned a relative shirt, based on the position that you play in. So, yeah, I would be all for that. But I don't think the squad numbers have actually been released so far this season. So maybe that will change. But, yeah, if I had my way and, I was kind of doing that and doing all the admin for player shirts, then, yeah, I'd certainly have Jack Stacey as a number 2.
Yeah, I agree. Do the right thing, Jack. Come on. Onel Hernandez's right peg said, Paddy, is it true that the club are looking into the Asian market either now or later down the line?
Well, funnily enough, we did have that conversation with a sporting director at their training base a couple of days ago, didn't we? And just a broad one about recruitment generally. And I don't think I'm breaching any confidences that he said that is a market that they would like to penetrate. But
well, Yang was in a Norwich shirt, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, in the figment of some clown's imagination, he was. But
I saw some stories on that.
Did you? Yeah. Well, okay, that's interesting. But I think you'll find it been deleted by now. But that's a different story. But anyway, I mean, and essentially in Ben's opinion, that you need people on the ground, and they don't have that in comparison to the South American network, which they still very much have and is still very much active. It might not have produced, obviously, the Nunes and Sara connection. There's been no real, I don't think there's been anything from that market since, has there? So in comparison with South America, no, they don't have that resource in that territory at the moment. But I mean, apparently Lee Dunn has been out there and has watched games previously, so it's clearly an area of the world that they are well aware of. But I don't think that they at this moment have put any real resource into it in comparison to South America. But maybe watch his space.
Yeah, sorry, me and Adam were laughing at a question there that we're definitely not going to be able to read out. So, that's a shame. But thank you to the person that sent that in. Adam, we'll do a couple more because time is running out. This sent in says, mental strength and resilience was an issue last season. Losing players like Ashley Barnes and Grant Hanley in January may have been a contributing factor. Have the club addressed this with their changes in playing and backroom staff?
I think playing staff, you'd have to say yes. You kind of look at now the age generally of the squad. It's come up a few years, and Harry Darling, championship proven operator, certainly not someone that's going to be scared by big physical strikers, in the championship, which you inevitably get. Jakov Medic, I don't think I'd want to mess with him in any capacity, whether that would be down a dark alley at the middle of the evening or on a football pitch. I also just think, I think, you kind of look at some of the experienced players, even Jeffrey Schlupp, we spoke around maybe at the top of the show, a man that's won the Premier League, has won a Scottish title as well, played in sort of, the Champions League. I really don't think he's going to be another one that would be sort of two-phased, sort of in difficult moments of adversity in the Championship over the course of a 46-game season. So for me, those are the right kind of characters you want within your group. They all feel like as a squad, a lot more sort of unified, I think, this season, or even just kind of from the videos and the bits you see sort of behind the scenes as well. And that sort of is kind of what you need, I think, in those difficult moments. It's not necessarily about just having leaders on the pitch. It's about having a squad that's, you know, together and sort of fighting for the same cause. And I kind of get the sense that that's the case. But I also think some of the younger players they've got in that group, I mean, Jacob Wright took the captaincy the other day, and you kind of hear him on the pitch vocally all the time. And for a 19-year-old, he kind of looks like someone who should be a lot older. So I don't think they'll have the same level of problems. And then in terms of the backroom staff, you know, Liam Manning's managed in England for majority of his, you know, time. Of course, had some spells abroad as well. And the fact he's managed in the Championship, got a Bristol City team that, let's face it, on paper, quality-wise, probably didn't deserve to be in and around the top 6, but he got them there because he kind of built on sort of all those values and sort of built the foundations of a successful team. And hopefully he can kind of do the same here again with the backroom staff. You know, we had the podcast with Ryan Gary the other day. He spoke very well, and I came away from that thinking this is a man that's got his head screwed on, very intelligent, very driven. So for all those reasons, yeah, I feel probably compared to this time last year where it was a lot more unknown with Johannes and Glenn, who had never been or stepped foot in England in terms of their senior management careers or coaching careers. I think Norwich are in a better place probably to deal with that Championship grind.
Right, I'm gonna put you on notice for Diane's question, the brilliant Diane Blazer, who does some excellent work with the Norwich City Fans Social Club, because we'll come back to it. I'm just giving you some thinking time. She has asked, what would be your starting 11 with the squad as it will be by the first weekend? So we'll leave that for now. And a couple of quick fire ones. Paddy, first and foremost, one word, who's more likely, Maatsen or Topic?
Maatsen.
Okay, lovely. And we'll ask both of you this one. This from Ian Gabelli, who says, will there ever be a boy born who can swim faster than a shark?
No.
No, I agree, because I think to answer that,
the answer's no, Con.
to answer that scientifically, you've got to presume the evolution of the shark just stops here and now, and the human continues to rise. So I think we're right in that. Right, Diane's question. Adam, I'll come to you first. What would be, with the squad, maybe how you feel it will look? She set them parameters, not me. What is the starting 11?
Kovacevic, Stacey, Darling, Medic, Schlupp, Wright, new midfielder, Diallo, Forson, Jurasek, Chris Gordon.
Ooh. Pad?
Yeah, the only one I'd contend is maybe get Nunes in there, but yeah, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. Obviously, if there's certain American is still in the building, then he starts in place of Chris Gordon. But if that isn't the case, then yes, Chris Gordon for me. You, Connor?
Yeah, I think I'll go Kovacevic, Stacey. I know people keep shouting at us about that, but for I'll briefly explain it. But essentially, Jack Stacey a little bit ahead of where Kellen Fisher is fitness-wise. He also signed a new contract, and for reasons we've discussed previously, I don't think he does that unless he has, and he's said this, had really positive dialogue with Liam Manning. And I think also the way that Liam Manning will want his fullbacks to play will probably start itself with Jack Stacey. Doesn't mean that Kellen Fisher is a bad player or anything like that. I just think it's where they'll start. Medic, Darling, Schlupp, Wright, Nunez, Jurasek, Sienats, Forson, Diallo, Chris Gordon. I think we start there. So that's where Norwich might start against Millwall. That is where we are going to end. Thank you very much for joining us, whether you've been watching on video or audio, and thank you very much for obviously consuming all of our content whilst we've been out here in the Netherlands. We've still got 2 games to go on Friday. Norwich City playing Olympiacos and ADO Den Haag in what are actually, and it feels weird to say this because it feels like pre-season's only just begun, their penultimate pre-season friendlies before the Championship campaign kicks off against Millwall in a couple of weeks. And to see us out, Paddy is going to give our offer a very nice plug.
I feared for a minute you're going to get me to sing then. That would have been terrible.
Like. You sing it if you want.
Trust me, that wouldn't have done a lot for the offers, which are, if you're not already with us on the journey, if you are, many thanks. We always say this and we mean it.
Because it makes things like this possible, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Without it, it'd be very difficult for us to be out here and try and have all angles covered as much as we can. Thanks to Norwich as well, because we've had some very good access out here. Dan Hawker and his team, excellent. So, for that reason, you should be with us if you're not already. If you need convincing, then we've got a couple of offers, and you get the full range of content. You get all the free-to-air, as we'll call it, audio, video, but also all the content that only subscribers get. And all the details are either pinned on the PinkUn social media accounts or the pinkun.com. You can go on there and there's a tab, subscribe, and it's got all the details. But essentially, £15, 50% for an annual subscription, which
All season long.
you cannot argue with that. In my opinion, I'm biased, I know, but £15 for 12 months of every game, every press conference, home, away, special interviews as we've had with Mark Atanasio, Ryan Gary. We could go on. Or if you need still a little bit convincing, I think we've got a shorter offer. It's £3 for 3 months. So just dip your toe in the water proverbially, and you won't turn back and join the other thousands and thousands now who are on the movement with us to the Premier League.
Indeed. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.